Hi everyone, I'm here with Stewart and Lizzie today to discuss End Digital Poverty Day. For those of you who need a visual description, I'm Stephen, producer at Drum. I'm a white male with brown hair and a beard, and I'm currently wearing a dark grey hoodie. Stewart?
Hi, I'm Stewart. I'm digital director at Drum. For those that need a visual description of me, I'm a white male. I've got a scruffy beard, short hair, and I'm wearing a purple hoodie.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm design lead at Drum. I'm a white female. I've got shoulder length brown hair. I'm wearing a bright pink t-shirt.
Cool. Thanks for joining today, guys. I'm just going to read out the actual description of End Digital Poverty Day by the Digital Poverty Alliance. So digital poverty is the inability to interact with the online world fully when, where, and how an individual needs. So there's three of the biggest contributing factors to digital poverty and which enable the digital divide are financial poverty, causing digital poverty, access, which can be geographical or location-based, and skills, including a lack of education and awareness. So my first question to you both is, what would you say are some examples of digital poverty, particularly well-known examples?
Okay, so a common example of digital poverty would be low income, where family can't afford broadband or they can't afford smartphones. So maybe they're using phones which have 4G, or they might not be able to afford, devices, tablets, computers. And, then there's an instant lack of access to basic things like needing to book a doctor's appointment, or if you want to apply for a job and having to go to the library, for example, to access the internet. But then what happens if, maybe the company replies and you're invited for an interview, but you don't see that email till, maybe a week later, because, it's not always possible for people to get to the library every day to access internet. So yeah, that's just a quick example.
And another example is, like you touched on, is location. So rural communities out in the country, whether that's in the UK or whether that's abroad, whether that's in the very remote areas of Africa or Russia or somewhere like that. It's all about not having the connection, the online connection, when so much is based online these days. People need stable connections, otherwise they're not included.
Yeah, and I suppose a lot of that kind of became apparent during COVID, right? People with poor internet connections, people having to transition to work from home all of a sudden, and if they've got poor internet connections, or even if their laptop isn't great, then they're kind of stuck with that. And then I suppose as well, children at school, right, we kind of changed to having to kind of do all your schoolwork at home, which is obviously can cause a lot of issues.
Absolutely. And that happened with me, with my kids. All of a sudden they needed laptops, and we were fortunate enough to have a spare old one for them to be able to log in, but obviously we still had to work. There's a lot of families that all of a sudden they needed that laptop, that platform, to be able to homeschool, I suppose. And no one well, they wouldn't be able to get on, they wouldn't be able to access it, and all of a sudden you've got those children that are being left behind and just don't have the resources.
Was there any kind of, from your experience, Stu, was there any kind of did the schools provide any equipment to the students at all? No, absolutely not. They don't have the funding for that either. Even now, my eldest is in secondary school, and as part of the curriculum they need a laptop, and you can either buy that through the school or provide your own one. And again, if they're expensive bits of kit.
you can't expect everyone to just suddenly be able to fork out for a laptop. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose, yeah, those are some kind of the more well-known examples, but do you guys have any kind of lesser known examples to share perhaps?
I think one of the lesser known examples is on the accessibility side for anyone who's got a disability, where with like it's about 97% of websites have some kind of inaccessibility. So, you know, instantly, if you acquire a disability, you're cut out of like 97% of things online potentially. You know, literally overnight, it suddenly becomes difficult to book a doctor's appointment at the time that you need it the most, to access information about a condition, to access support. You know, there's so many aspects to that I think even if you can afford a smartphone and you can afford internet, that you can find, well, it's not actually accessible to you in the way that you need it to be. And then you're excluded from, you know, the majority of the digital world.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, just the same applies to the elderly population. You know, a lack of digital literacy, I suppose, understanding, or a reluctance to take it on board, to adopt it. You know, the elderly, they don't necessarily want a smartphone. They can't understand a smartphone. They want to be able to phone their GP for an appointment. They want to be able to phone and talk to people rather than have a faceless conversation through a chat bot, which is in their mind completely unnecessary, completely pointless, and, you know, shouldn't have to do it or don't understand how to do it. And, you know, this whole idea of forcing people online, you not everyone can, not everyone wants to. There's a lot of people that, you know, still refuse to do online banking, and you know, that's more secure than actually walking into a branch and doing your banking. But people prefer that. People want to do that. They either don't have the means to access online banking, or they don't trust it.
Yeah, and I suppose it's tricky, right? Because who's, for the example you use, like an elderly person who perhaps isn't super kind of tech aware, who should kind of help them do that? Should it be kind of like family? Should it be friends? Should it be educational wise? Should it be local councils, government? It's really tricky, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, but then also, should there be the insistence that they do have to do everything online? Should there be other channels available for those that can't or won't? You know, in terms of education, it's, I suppose, the old saying of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Is, you know, if you're talking to someone who's late 80s, early 90s, and trying to talk them through, you know, a GP messaging system that has been set up by their local practice, they're going to see it as completely unnecessary, potentially.
I think a really key thing as well is that with service design or UX design, like, designers need to think out of their own mindset, because most designers do embrace digital. We're doing the job, and we do have high-speed internet. We are used to using, you know, high-quality devices. So people just need to step out of that mindset, and when they're designing services, don't just replace everything with digital. It needs to still have those face-to-face interactions or phone calls. And then on the UX side, like, make those contact details open and available, not hiding them, not making them difficult to interact with, not using icons and lots of extra imagery and videos when they're not needed.
I mean, it kind of leads into the argument of, you know, social equity versus social equality, right? So, you know, making everyone go online and doing, you know, everyone has the same opportunities to do something they need to isn't the same as giving people the, you know, the routes that they prefer to use, whether that's from an accessible point of view or whether it's you know, we're going back to the elderly or something like that, or to say which they, if they can only phone up and they don't have a smartphone to access a service, that route should be available to them.
Interestingly, another sort of just a small example is that a lot of people don't own a printer anymore. So there's more and more reliance on needing to sign documents digitally, or occasionally you still need that printer. And then what do you do? And it's like the range of considerations hasn't been there. And especially with sustainability, like some people are really embracing paper free, but if that's not compatible with another aspect of that service that's being designed, then you know, yeah, we need to cater for everybody, and that won't be the same for everybody.
Yeah, and going back to COVID and schools and home learning, we were getting homework in the morning that needed to be printed out and then photographed and emailed back to the teacher, and we didn't have a printer, so I had to go into the office at work, make sure no one was in there, go in there in the morning, print off reams of paper, get home to be able to the kids could do their homework and then photograph it and sent off to the school, which is completely against sustainability.
Yeah, it seems to be there's kind of like a conflict, right? Of digital is kind of the standard and the norm, but then there's still lots of kind of offline kind of work, which still needs to be incorporated. It reminds me of the examples I see quite a few, like banks advertising on YouTube videos where they kind of have classes for people who just want some digital skills. I think it's like Lloyd's and Barclays, but I only see those on YouTube videos, whereas I'm not sure if they're on TV or if they're kind of, if you see those kind of posters for those adverts out and about, or kind of if it's advertised within store in a bank, because it's fine for me because I class myself as very digital literate, and obviously I'm on YouTube, so it's fine. But for other people, they might not even know what YouTube is. So, all right, cool. What kind of with all the kind of examples we've discussed, what else do you both think that kind of this could potentially lead to? What could digital poverty kind of lead to in someone's life, perhaps?
I mean, you know, there's the educational disparities. So students without internet access or extremely slow internet access, or lack of digital devices, can easily fall behind or feel like they're falling behind in their education. You know, and that sort of thing is difficult to claw back. And again, you know, it's going back to the classic example of COVID. You know, the amount of inequality there in terms of digital poverty or access, it was massive. And you know, you're seeing the effects now when you get to exam age and you missed essentially 2 years of good solid education. Another consequence is, I suppose, economically, most jobs are listed online, job sites, all that kind of things like LinkedIn, things like networking. If you don't if you have a lack of access to that, you're at a big disadvantage, unless you take daily trips down to the job center, or if they still have the agents that work from offices, jobs, all that kind of stuff. If you don't have the access to that online, then how are you expected to be able to apply for the jobs that you want without sitting on the phone and phoning people? But then I think most companies, if they got a job application purely through the phone, they'd forget about it.
I also think on the health side, like people's health can definitely suffer. Like if you can't get that access, the support, whether that's for a mental health support or something more with a health condition, or, everything charity wise tends to be online. Even booking a doctor's appointment, like the platform our doctors use is incredibly difficult to use. And I'm saying that as a digitally literate person, I'm finding it difficult. And, if you can't get that doctor's appointment, or it's delayed, or you have to wait and ask a friend or a relative to help you, you might have already waited another week when you should have really needed to see the doctor straight away, for example. Like there's lots of factors there.
What do you kind of both think can be done to kind of reduce digital poverty? Should it be kind of at a government level? Should it be educational level? What do you both think?
I think lots of different aspects. Yeah, I mean, on the government and council side, like the more structure and legislation and requirements, like for example the European Accessibility Act will make a huge improvement for people in one area of this on the disability side for people in the EU, but it's not applicable yet in the UK for the wider digital sphere. So yeah, the more and more things like that come through that force people into having compliance on their website and being accessible would help a lot in that area.
Yeah, it's it's sort of at the very top level. It's investment in infrastructure and building affordable internet access, and things like community hubs, community networks, where a localized network is created within rural communities. You can build a localized network where everyone's router talks to each other and creates their own little internet service, basically, and then they all kind of route up through there. So there's lots going on. There's lots of solutions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it kind of from a bit more awareness point of view, and then particularly kind of sustainability. I was thinking kind of it's the go-to, isn't it? You always think if your phone is kind of on its way out, or your laptop, you always think, well, I'll just get a new one. But I know I'm definitely trying to shift my mindset and to be a bit more, well, actually see if I can repair it, or see if someone else can repair it, and kind of help in that way. I know a drum, we've tried to kind of do that, haven't we? We've kind of got a lot of old kind of assets. I always think the example of business cards. If we go to events, and we always kind of have that discussion, what should we do with them? Because we don't really want to give out business cards anymore, but we've got them already. So what should we do with them? But I know I listened to a talk from the phone group, is what they were called. And obviously this was relating to mobile phones, but they said the most sustainable asset is the one you already have. And I thought that's quite a good kind of idea. So I think from a sustainability point of view, I think there needs to be more kind of emphasis on, kind of repairing devices and reusing them, recycling them, to, kind of just not getting rid of your old laptop, giving it to someone else if there's still potential use for it.
Yeah, that's it. Donate your old kit. There's always people that need it. The amount of e-waste sitting in people's houses is ridiculous, and I'm guilty of it as well. The amount of cables I've got, old SCART cables for a VHS player that has been buried for 10 years. I've still got the cable because you never know, I might need it. But I do need to. I do kind of hoard cables and things which I need to get out of. But in terms of devices, there's so many organizations and things that you can donate to, rather than just stick it in the the electrical tip. Donate it, put it to use. Like you said, try and reuse it, fix it. I mean, mobile phones are notoriously difficult to try and self-fix, but again, they're looking at that. They're looking at solutions for that, whether it's modular components so you can swap one out and put a new one in, or whether it's just easily repairable by yourself and you can buy spare parts, or like I said, donate it.
And there are more and more sort of repair cafes popping up, and I think we'll see a huge growth in that area as well, like over time. I think from the design side and the education side, I think when I was in my design education, I was very much in that era of being taught that animating everything is great for the user experience because it engages people, which is like a very incorrect assumption, because for a start, if someone doesn't have a smartphone, those animations might not even load, which instantly means that person cannot see that page, and all these high quality images and videos, like things auto playing. So I think we definitely need to change design education, that we're designing for a lightweight experience so that someone using 3G or 4G can still access some information. It shouldn't be blocking them from accessing stuff if there's videos that are too big. So yeah, I think there's a shift in mindset to be had there as well. And also it can affect anyone at any time. Like, I had some friends who moved to the countryside. They were expecting their internet to work, and then BT said, well, actually, we've got to do this thing, and it took 2 months. So they were trying to work at home without internet for 2 months. So you never know when suddenly you might be without internet, or just your cables break on your road. Like, you never know when this is going to happen. So we need to think more lightweight across everything.
Well, just going back to that, I think haven't they shut down the 3G network now? I believe.
I think so.
Which means any phones that people have that only go up to 3G won't be able to connect to it, because it's 4G and 5G now. Which again, I get the need to upgrade, but then you then need a new device, which again is a massive financial outlay. And what do you do with your old one? You can't donate it because it's 3G, so no one will be able to use it.
So for everyone watching, hopefully we'll learn something today regarding End Digital Poverty Day. I would strongly recommend checking out digitalpovertyalliance.org. You can learn about kind of everything they do in more detail, read about their 2024 charter, sign the charter for digital inclusion, and also look where your nearest place to donate a device is, which I know I'll definitely be doing. Thanks, everyone.